What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I am your host, Mike Tagliere. We are back with episode number 2 of the week. In case you missed it, we recorded an episode yesterday with Jeff Ratcliffe from Pro Football Focus covering the NFL Combine and what our biggest takeaways were. So make sure that you go back and check that out if you haven't yet. But today is a big day. We leave the NFL draft coverage for a moment to discuss the next big event on the NFL calendar, and that is, of course, NFL free agency. We are going to give you the names that you should be, who are slated to hit the free agent market, the ones that you need to know, including a few big bombs that were dropped earlier today. And to do that, we brought in my friend Mike Wright from the Fantasy Footballers. Mike, what's good, my man?
No, everything's good over here. It's Mike and Mike. The alternate version, I guess. It's been done before. I hear it didn't end very well for those two fine gentlemen.
Mike, let's be real, Mike. If we were able to stick with this gig and do it for, 20 years or something like that, like they did, I think we'd be doing pretty well for ourselves.
Yeah,
right?
I guess, that you count that as a W, I suppose.
But we're cool in real life though. Like off the mic,
for sure.
Off the mic, we're unverified brethren. We get together, like we have these meetings and we console each other about being unverified on Twitter. Anybody from Twitter listening, please verify both of us.
Yeah, we could do some verifications. You were at the meal, the eggplant meal, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
I had to pay out a bet for the Fantasy Footballers last year, and Tags got to watch me attempt to eat eggplant, and it was terrible.
You did better than I would have, man. I like, honestly, I have a natural gag reflex when it comes to things like that,
Sure.
where it's just like, like broccoli, like as soon as broccoli hits my lips or my tongue, it wants to come right back up. It's just a bad memory from my childhood. I don't want to revisit it, man. I don't want But we were talking before this show, and obviously Mike and I both have kids, and so he's feeling a little under the weather today. So if he doesn't sound his usual, his self, understand why.
Don't worry about it. I will be fine. The bigger thing will be if there is silence on this end, then something has happened, and I am visiting a different type of room.
Well, if anybody from around me and my social circles can tell you, I'll just keep talking. So we'll keep moving forward. There's a lot of players that I want to get covered in this episode today. So let's just jump into it. First, before we talk about the actual free agents, there's news that just dropped right before we started recording, and it's about LeVeon Bell, right? We all knew that the Steelers and LeVeon Bell were going to come to this point. No contract was going to get done. They were going to franchise tag him. They have done that once again. It's an exclusive tag, which means his price tag is all the way up to $14.5 million. The next closest running back salary-wise is Devonta Freeman at 8.2. So, Mike, there's some whispers out there that LeVeon Bell has been saying that he's going to retire or he's going to hold out, that he's not going to play under the tag again. Are you buying this crap, or are you saying, you know what, LeVeon Bell, you wanted $15 million a year because you wanted to get paid like a wide receiver / running back? You're getting that $15 million a year. Get on the field.
Yeah, I believe that he will play, and I also feel like the last thing I've heard the whispers from the bushes, I believe he said he will play, but we'll see how much of a fuss he makes, how much training camp he attends. I imagine it's going to be close to zero. Does this get to the point where he considers sitting out a game or two? But I think he will. I think he will be there, and the paycheck is going to be fair for a year. And it's one of those things where like it's so mirrors the situation in Washington of, if the team could go back 2 years and go, man, we should have just paid him what he wanted, because now we're paying through the nose and we're going to get 2 years, and we have a very large chance that if we don't give him the contract he wants, that he's just going to leave the team. And Le'Veon Bell, I mean, there's plenty of things going around, on Twitter. What's the true value of a running back? The position, I agree, it is a bit devalued, but then you get special players like Le'Veon Bell, who touch the ball in your offense over 400 times, and they probably are worth the money, that where you have to break the mold. Le'Veon Bell cannot be paid like a running back because your team does not use him like other teams use a running back, where they give him 2 carries and then he goes off the field for third down. This guy's touching the ball so many times that you just have to look at his position differently than a running back, and now your team is in quite the predicament because of that.
Well, now my question here is how far are they off in talks? Because, if the Steelers are willing to pay him $14.5 million this year, that means they had to come to the table with a decent number. Because if they're willing to pay that, I mean, I figured they'd let him walk if they couldn't get a long-term deal done. But to pay this much money, I just don't know how much he wants per year. And like I said, the next closest running back, 8.2 million. It's just I understand LeVeon Bell making the case to make 10 to 12 million per year, but more than that, I just think you're asking for too much. And yes, he does contribute a lot more than other running backs do. And that's why, there's the argument to be made for Saquon Barkley. And does he belong in the top 10 picks? Is
Right.
it a good pick because he's a receiver? You can go in a million different ways. But my point and the fact of the matter here is that if you own Le'Veon Bell in a dynasty league, do not fret. Like I have a lot of shares of Le'Veon Bell in my leagues, and I've gotten text messages from friends and league mates, telling me Mike's scared. Mike,
Yeah, they're
don't.
sending the boogeyman.
Yeah, that's basically what they're doing. I'm telling him, not worried. I'm really not. I think he's going to hold out. We might get another situation where they punish him for the first week of the season like they did against the Browns last year. But Le'Veon Bell's going to be back on a football field in 2018. I'm not really worried about that.
Agreed.
Two players, Mike, though, that hit the news today that are the biggest names in free agency from a fantasy football perspective. Allen Robinson. The Jags decided not to tag him. I don't know what's going on here. I'm not sure why that happened because, a couple weeks ago, it seemed like it was a foregone conclusion that he would be tagged. Now, I don't think they're using the franchise tag on anyone. They have the cap room. I mean, I just don't understand why they're not tagging him. And then Sammy Watkins, that one we knew was going to come down to the wire between him, LaMarcus Joyner. Some people said Trumaine Johnson was going to be involved in that conversation, but they ultimately decided to franchise tag LaMarcus Joyner because he's a safety, and the franchise tag for number for safeties is like 5 million less. And considering Sammy Watkins saw 70 targets in your offense last year, even while Robert Woods was injured for a latter portion of that season, I mean, I don't know why they were so interested in bringing Sammy back. I don't know why Sammy Watkins would want to go back. So let's start talking about these players, Mike. Like, where's the ideal landing spot? Let's start with Allen Robinson. I think he's the number one on most people's boards. So let's start there. Where would you like to see Robinson go from a fantasy perspective?
So the interesting thing about Allen Robinson, I don't know if you were following this, but I think it was on Sunday that the guys from Roster Watch, they tweeted out and they said, we have a very reliable source. It's, of course, an unnamed source that says that the Jags are not going to franchise Allen Robinson. And this was the first thing like you said, everything I had heard from reputable sources said they're going to franchise tag him. They do not want to lose Allen Robinson. They're going to pass on Marquise Lee. Roster Watch tweets this out, and you're like, well, I don't know. They're good guys over there. It just seems like a comment that came out of nowhere. And then you start following what is happening. Allen Robinson liked that tweet. I'm like, that's kind of an interesting thing. And then he starts vague tweeting, you reap what you sow.
Yep.
And all these is like, what is happening? Is there actual legs to this rumor that Roster Watch is tweeting out? And here we are a couple days later, and Ian Rappaport saying, well, looks like the Jags are not going to franchise tag him. And I thought, this is bananas. So I mean, kudos to those guys for that unnamed source coming through. And I have one spot I am where I'm shouting it from the mountaintops that this is what I think is happening. Allen Robinson to the San Francisco 49ers. They have the need. They have the money. They have a GM who's willing to pay that money to a guy like Allen Robinson. You have a franchise quarterback. Get yourself a very young Allen Robinson is still very, very young. Get a franchise level wide receiver. I think it's the perfect match. Go play for Kyle Shanahan with a good quarterback. Well, what wide receiver would not want to do that while making a truck full of gold bullion? So I think this is exactly what Allen Robinson should do and will do. There's going to be plenty of other suitors. I know Chicago Bears Twitter has been losing their minds thinking of Allen Robinson coming to Chicago, but all signs to me point to San Francisco.
Do not rain on my parade, Mike. That's first off. So obviously,
I've got some guys going to the Bears, just not Allen Robinson.
For what it's worth, I do think that the Bears land one of the two. I think that the 49ers and the Bears are the two clear-cut ones that could land Robinson and Watkins. I don't think one. Some people have mentioned that some team could land both of them. Like the Bears have enough cap space to do that. I don't think they're going to do that. The Bears just placed their transition tag on Kyle Fuller, their cornerback. So a lot of people were tying Calvin Ridley to them in the first round. Now they've kind of taken care of that cornerback need, which eliminates another need. If they're able to get one of these big name receivers, they're able to go a multiple, like there's so many different ways that they can go in the draft. And the Bears roster isn't as bad as you would think. And this is a second I want to take a moment just to go back to all the people that talked about the Bears last offseason and how bad they said the trade for Mitchell Trubisky was and that the Bears gave up too much and this and that. There's a domino effect in all of this, right? Because let's pretend that Allen Robinson hits free agency like he's about to, right? That the Jags don't get that long-term deal done because they do have up until March 12th to get a long-term deal done, though Allen Robinson seems like he's moving on. But here's the thing. If you're the Bears and you're sitting there with Mike Glennon as your quarterback, because that's who it would have been had it not been, them moving up to grab Trubisky, do you think Allen Robinson's going to come to Chicago with Mike Glennon under center? The answer is no. The 49ers, to go out and get Jimmy G, granted, they got him really, really cheap, and that's the Patriots' mistake. That's how you attract these big name free agents. Like, Allen Robinson's been playing with Blake Bortles. He wants to go play with a good quarterback. He wants to not get frustrated. You heard him during some of the games during their training camp. Allen Robinson was saying, "Come on, man! Like Blake Bortles, he's just not good." So I really, for fantasy purposes, do I think that the 49ers would be the best bet? I don't know. I don't know that they would be better than the Bears because you have to think about it. The 49ers, Marquise Goodwin took a really big step forward towards the end of last year. He was the downfield threat. That's why I don't tie Sammy Watkins to the 49ers as much as I do Allen Robinson. You have Pierre Garçon, who's the possession receiver. They're paying, over $15 million for him a year. Obviously he's going to be involved. So I think that the volume might be a little bit harder to come by in San Fran. It might be a little bit more efficient, although I think Matt Nagy can do a great job. So honestly, I'm really excited about these guys. What about Watkins? Do you think that, is there a certain landing spot for him?
Yeah. Well, first off, I really like the bedtime stories. That's being too derogatory, but just the blanket of the Trubisky trade you're trying to wear right now, pretending like they couldn't have just waited and gotten Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson.
Well,
right there at number 3.
I mean, to be fair, the book still, I'm not willing, I'm not one of those guys that's willing to say that Patrick Mahomes is
I'm certainly not either.
Yeah. So,
and I'm not closing it on Trubisky either. It's just, I feel like that's Chicago tags coming through going, look, this is why we did it. We're going to get Allen Robinson. This is going to happen. But you are right that you need to make moves, because if you had Mike Glennon again this year, it would things would be very, very bad.
Yeah, it would be grim.
Here's my narrative dream for Sammy Watkins. So this is not necessarily a fantasy football take. This is just Mike, the fantasy man, right? Sometimes like to watch the world burn. I want to see Sammy Watkins go to Oakland and play with Amari Cooper, so it can just be this huge smorgasbord of, this is the year, guys. This is the year that Sammy Watkins. This is the year that Amari Cooper. So just to have those two guys on the same team the storylines would be so amazing. And on top of that, the actual fantasy production could be incredible. Now, I don't think that's even being whispered about or rumored. It just would be a very, very fun thing for me to see. But I'm with you that I think Chicago, if they can't land Allen Robinson, Chicago makes sense. I really thought that he would end up back in Los Angeles, not under the franchise tag, because I'm with you. Why would the Rams pay him that much money when he was not that integral to their offense? He helped them. He was a threat near the goal line, and he helps their team, but you can't pay him franchise money. So yeah. I think that the Rams are still in play for Sammy Watkins. I think that the market out there for Sammy will not be what he believes it should be for him.
That's a good question, and that's where I'm at with Watkins. It's like you have to wonder. He's the number 4 overall pick from a couple years ago. He's just
long time ago.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He's 24 years old, so it's not that long ago. And that's what I'm saying is like I don't know where you're at with Watkins. I'm a believer in his talent.
I firmly believe in his talent, but the guy's hurt all the time. We've barely ever seen that talent actually flash. And you had Robert Woods completely outclassing you after the trade for when you're on the same team. So you had this like strange experiment of teammates. Okay, well, that's what happens when Robert Woods and Sammy Watkins are on the Bills. Well, Sammy, he's kind of the big stuff. Well, let's put him on a completely different team in a scheme, and all of a sudden Robert Woods looks like the much better wide receiver, or at least was schemed to be the much better wide receiver. But I'm with you. I believe in Sammy Watkins' talent. Will we ever get there, or will it just be Sammy, this is the year Watkins every single year of his career?
Well, that's the thing. Wasn't it the fit though? You talked about it. I mean, you hit right on where I wanted to go with this about the Bills and the Rams. Like where Sammy Watkins, he went to the Rams like legitimately 2 weeks before the season began. It's a very tough in your first year in an offense, but not just that, but going there 2 weeks before the season, and it's like, oh my God, yeah, this is what's happening. Robert Woods, it all comes down to the quarterbacks they're playing with, in my opinion. I think Tyrod Taylor fit Sammy Watkins' skill set extremely well. He could throw the deep ball. I mean, when Sammy went to the Rams, I was a little concerned. I thought he would get more targets, but at the same time, I was concerned about Jared Goff and his skill set not necessarily fitting in with Watkins. And after seeing 70 targets in that first season, Sammy, he said he was frustrated a few times during the season. So that leads me to believe that he wants to see what's out there, see what opportunities. I do believe the Bears will be in play. I think the Redskins should be a team that's in play. They have Josh Doxson as a red zone threat, but he's not really that downfield guy. Alex Smith could use a speed guy down the field. And I think the Panthers, in terms of cap room, the Panthers, not franchise tagging Norwell, I think that really helps them free up some room. I think they need that downfield receiver for Cam Newton's arm. I think that would help, spread the field for Christian McCaffrey, take advantage of Cam Newton's biggest strength, his massive arm. There's a few teams that should be in on him. The Cowboys would obviously be a fit, but I don't think they have the cap to make that happen.
Well, what about the fit of another big armed quarterback who desperately needs some wide receivers? Is Joe Flacco in Baltimore? They have to rehaul the wide receiver core completely. Would you, for fantasy purposes, like Sammy Watkins ending up there?
Well, that's the thing is like going through these receivers, I have some secondary wide receivers that I feel like the Ravens are going to be in play on, like a Dante Moncrief, like Paul Richardson. I think that those are the players that the Ravens have to look at, because when you look at teams around the league and the cap situation, the Ravens don't have the money to afford Sammy Watkins. They're not going to right now. As of right now, with the cuts that have taken place, they have $9 million in cap room. It's just not going to work with Sammy Watkins because he's going to get more than that, considering his age and the pedigree that he comes from, and the high draft stock, all that stuff. Players like Sammy Watkins don't hit free agency very often, and when they do, they're usually overpaid when they're that young.
Right.
So that's why the Ravens, for sure, if they had the money, I think they'd be in on all these guys. But the Ravens, I think, are in a position at 16 in the draft where they're going to be able to pick whatever wide receiver they want. I mean, I think Calvin Ridley.
Is there even a one in this draft?
Right. That's the question. Do they consider Cortland Sutton to be first round worthy? Do they want Ridley? Do they want a possession style receiver? I can't answer that question as of right now what the Ravens want, but I know they need a receiver because they're even talking about cutting Jeremy Maclin, but that would free up, I think it was either 5 or 7 million.
Yeah, I think
which isn't going to.
$5.
Yeah, it's not going to free up any space. I mean, that's for a minimum free agent. Like you're looking at like someone like a Paul Richardson. He might even get more than that. Maybe a John Brown, a Kendall Wright. That's what you're getting for $5 million. So, touching on some of these other wide receivers, because we obviously want to try and get on every position here. Do any of these can these guys pop back up on the fantasy radar? Jordan Matthews, he's one. His name went away because he went with the Bills. We know what happened with the Bills. Marquise Lee. Now that the Jags didn't franchise tag Allen Robinson, do they go back to Marquise Lee and say, hey, look, you filled his role last year. We want you back. Paul Richardson, as I mentioned, Dante Moncrief, John Brown. What, is there any of these guys that should be fantasy relevant and maybe they should look outside of the team that they're currently with?
Yeah, I think Marquise Lee, that should be, as close to a done deal. If they're not going to franchise Allen Robinson, then you got to bring someone back. You don't want to just blow up that wide receiver core when you have some good players. So I think they bring back Marquise Lee. Jordan Matthews is the guy I have pegged going to Baltimore because he should get that secondary style of money. I still believe in the talents I'm a Jordan Matthews truther. I don't think he's an elite level guy, but I think that he fits in, get that big bodied slot receiver down there for Joe Flacco. I think that the fit makes sense. You could turn Jordan Matthews back into that low-level wide receiver too, get him some volume. We've seen it with with Steve Smith. It worked out just fine. That we know that fantasy value can be had as a Baltimore wide receiver. It's not a death sentence to your fantasy value to end up there. So you get a guy, Matthews, his first 16 touchdowns in his first 2 years, over 800 yards, I believe, his first 3 years. I think he's good. I think he is. He's not elite, but so that's fine. Don't treat him like an elite player. Get him into the role that works, and I think that Baltimore is a place where Jordan Matthews could succeed.
I have a team for you. I have the Ravens down. So tomorrow morning, well, you actually, when this podcast probably goes up is when you're probably going to be able to see it. I'm coming out with my free agency primer. I go through every player, talk about them, give a paragraph, and talk about potential suitors. My suitors for Matthews, the Ravens are in there, but how about this? The Saints playing that
Okay,
big
okay.
Colston
Take
role.
Willie Snead's job.
Kinda, yeah. I mean, Willie Snead, obviously they're not too impressed with him. They were playing Brandon Coleman over him down the stretch.
Oh, my hold on, man. You're getting my dynasty team all sweaty over here. Thinking about that. My goodness. That
I
would
think the Colts too.
Yeah, the Colts. I have Moncrief going back as on a 1-year prove it deal with the Colts, but that's not too shabby there, Tags. I think that the Saints will be a sneaky fit there
Yeah, there's
for
just
Jordan
so
Matthews.
many weapons. Yeah, and playing in the slot there, we obviously know that Breeze can utilize that, but they've also talked about bringing Jimmy Graham back, who is another
Oh.
free agent that we'll get to in a minute.
Oh man, yeah, the tsunami that is Jimmy Graham. I mean, just washed, washed.
My question to you, though, let's pretend that happens. Dante Moncrief goes back to the Colts. How do you view him in fantasy? Is he draftable at this point? Like I was a Dante Moncrief fanboy. I was waiting for him and Luck to be on the field for a complete season, and that hasn't happened. So now, with the question marks surrounding his production without Luck, and now questioning Luck's health going into 2018, how do we feel about Moncrief? Is he worth a draft pick for fantasy footballers if he goes back to the Colts?
Yes, 100%. Because you can get him so late. You're talking deep sleeper. Just completely comatose. He's not even close to being awake, and the potential is there. I know you talked about the lack of production. To be fair, T.Y. Hilton, the final numbers are okay, but there was a complete and total lack of production for T.Y. Hilton as well. For the entire Colts passing game, it was just non-existent. I'm gonna still believe in Dante Moncrief and his skill set, his archetype. He's the size and the athleticism. It was starting to come together for Dante Moncrief before the injuries derailed it 2 years ago, and then of course Andrew Luck's injury last year. So I'm giving Dante Moncrief a pass. You talk about how young Sammy Watkins is. Moncrief is right there. He's still very, very young. So I think that Moncrief, if he goes back to the Colts, you grab him in the 12th round as that literally there is no risk but massive reward. I'd be all over that.
He's one of those potential league winners, when you go down that far, because he could be a top 24 wide receiver. Like he was being drafted as such a couple years ago with Andrew Luck. And the one stat I do have on Moncrief is that there have been 14 games in which he played with Luck and
Probably
saw
a
at least
touchdown
5
in every single one, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying is like 14 games where he had at least 5 targets with Andrew Luck. In those games, he averaged 4.6 receptions, 52 yards, and 0.8 touchdowns.
Yep.
So he scores in almost every game with Andrew Luck. He's really efficient in the red zone. Apparently, the Ravens are going to make a play, but Moncrief has been on record multiple times saying that he wants to go back with the Colts, but we're unsure as of right now if the Colts want to re-sign him.
And the question is, what do you believe in Andrew Luck? Do you believe that Andrew Luck comes back this year and he becomes that top 5 fantasy quarterback again? Because if he does, Dante Moncrief is going to get in on that action.
Yes, and that's the thing is like, Moncrief, I wanted to like him, and that's the thing. I've cooled down on him, but I'm with you though. I feel like if he's falling in drafts and you can get him as the 50th wide receiver off the board, which is likely where he's going to fall, I think that there's very little risk there, and you might as well take him over someone like the next guy we're going to talk about. And this one I'm going to leave to you because you're an Arizona guy. I'm John Brown. I mean, where are we at with John Brown? Like I'm a John Brown talent believer, but I'm also at the point now where he has missed either the whole game or the majority of the game in 10 of his last 22. It's just getting really tough and he's a really nice guy. We had him on the show. But it's just, I just don't know how to feel about him right now. What's your take on John Brown?
I'm with you. I don't know how to feel either. That we have Mike Jarecki, a local beat reporter, very trustworthy source, talking about that John Brown seems healthy right now. But that's the problem. John Brown, we've heard this story multiple years in a row. Hey, John Brown is actually healthy now, because John Brown, when healthy, was a 1,000-yard receiver who was on the verge of breaking out. And you're talking people are giving him that Antonio Brown comp of the size and just learning how to play the position, and then really, really unfortunate of the sickle cell trait just derailing his entire career. If Arizona is not willing to give him the chance, I haven't heard anything about contract talks between the Cardinals and John Brown, but if there is nothing there, then I would be incredibly skeptical of anybody giving him money, because if any team knows that he is actually healthy, it would be the Arizona Cardinals, and we have Fitz. That's the only wide receiver on our team right now. Fitz and Chad Williams.
I was about to say
Golden, or not Golden, whatever. This name is escaped. JJ Nelson. Though that's who's on the team right now. You're telling me if they don't want to bring back John Brown, then
That's
something
scary.
is amiss. And the same thing, he's probably too far down for this free agency show, but I'm going to bring him up anyways. That's Jerron Brown, who became the secondary target for the Arizona Cardinals. Allegedly, he already has 6 or so teams offering him wide receiver 2 levels of interest. So he will be an interesting name to monitor as well.
Yep. John Brown's out there. And that's the thing, is some people might actually value him more than John Brown right now, which is kind of crazy. If
Yeah.
we, going back 2 years, we wouldn't have said that. It wouldn't have been a conversation. Now, one team I think you want to keep an eye on for John Brown is the Cowboys. And the reason I say that is because they're a team that's strapped for cash. They have 1.5 million in cap space, so they can't go out there and get a big name free agent. They have a lot of other needs to take care of in the draft. I feel like John Brown is a low risk like signing for them, because they do have they're going to have Terrence Williams out there, which is a joke. I don't need to talk about Terrence Williams, but
he was lambasted on our last show because I had someone going to Dallas similar to you, get some size, get some speed. Let's see if we can get Terrell Pryor down there in a Dallas Cowboy uniform. Get him on, just have him run as fast as he can, trying to distract some defenders, get Des Bryant a little bit more open.
That whole Terrell Pryor back to the Browns thing, I don't understand it at all. Like that's not a fit at all. Like, don't connect those dots. I think Terrell Pryor's time in this league might be done, especially as a starter.
Oh, it certainly may be. I see the Browns connection working just because Hugh Jackson and
Hugh Jackson.
they have they're moving their team backwards, frankly, in my opinion. So for them to say, yeah, we want to bring Terrell Pryor back would make total and complete sense.
Yeah.
I don't think they should, which is why I want to see him go down to Dallas and join the Jerry Jones circus. That'd be something to watch.
Yeah, Terrell Pryor is going to be a free agent, but we're not talking about him. He's not. No. The last 3 I want to mention, Mike, and tell me which one you like the most and where potentially you could see them fitting. Kendall Wright, Mike Wallace, and Eric Decker. These are 3 veterans that obviously they're not going to come at a huge expense. They may wait it out in free agency to see what their options are. Maybe look to sign with a team that could maybe win them a championship, especially Wallace and Decker. But Kendall Wright, I mean, I'm of the mindset where Kendall Wright played well for the Bears last year. I feel like, the teams out there debating trading for Jarvis Landry and paying him $18 to $20 million a year is ridiculous. I think you could go on the cheap and pay Kendall Wright and get similar production. Maybe not as young, maybe not as, athletic after the catch, but I think he's solid, and you're going to pay him a lot less money. It was one of the more underrated signings of last year when the Bears signed him. I think it was for $5 million in free agencies.
Right.
Which one of these 3 receivers do you like, maybe for fantasy purposes, or would it all depend on landing spot?
All these guys are completely and totally landing spot dependent. It wouldn't shock me at all to see just a complete swapsies with the Miami Dolphins and Kendall Wright and Jarvis Landry. Just say, hey, we'll take your guy. And I don't know why they want to do that, but they don't want Jarvis, apparently. Mike Wallace is interesting because I think that Mike Wallace can still play. And I talked about them a little bit, but the Arizona Cardinals, I think, could use a guy like Mike Wallace, a little bit cheaper. The Cardinals have some cap room, but they don't have a ton of flexibility, and they have other needs that they really need to address. So to go get a veteran like Mike Wallace who can at least help your offense improve, I think would be a good move. And as far as fantasy value, no clue, because I don't know who's playing quarterback for Arizona.
Lamar Jackson. That's who I'm mocking.
I'd take him. arms wide open, I would take Lamar Jackson in Arizona.
I feel like they need to take a chance on a quarterback like that. Like, because I don't think that, if they stay there at 15 in the draft, I don't think that they're going to get one of the top, 3 guys.
No,
So,
they won't.
yeah, unless they trade up, I think they have to take a chance. And there's no, do they even have any quarterbacks on their roster right now? Because Palmer retired.
Nope.
Drew Stanton, free agency. Blaine Gabbert, free agent. So, yeah,
free agent.
Yeah.
There are no quarterbacks under contract, and I wasn't joking. I'm pretty sure that Fitz, Chad Williams, and J.J. Nelson are the 3 wide receivers under contract.
That's fantastic. Good luck with that. Not like the Bears of last year, starting Josh Bellamy. So Kendall Wright, here, tell me this doesn't sound like a complete Patriots thing. Patriots signed Kendall Wright to play the slot and replace Danny Amendola.
Yeah, maybe. What are you just throwing Edelman into the garbage?
Well, Edelman's, he's going to be 32 years old, coming off a major knee injury. He could still play perimeter. They were rotating him, Hogan, Amendola in the slot. They were kind of moving everybody around. And Wright can play outside. He doesn't have to be limited to the slot. That's why I don't know what John Fox was doing, but that's what he was doing.
We know what John Fox was doing.
Bad is what he was doing. Bad. It's like Hugh Jackson level bad. But thankfully, I don't have to watch John Fox on Sundays anymore. I'm going to go on a tangent here, so I don't need to be going to do that, Mike. Look what you're doing to me.
Oh, John Fox was the Jeff Fisher that we had, and now we need to find someone. I guess Hugh Jackson kind of is fitting into that mold right now.
Yeah, Marvin Lewis. I think we could put them all in like a phone booth. Let them duke it out. Let's talk.
The best part is that they probably wish that phone booths were still around. Back in my day, we had to go down to the corner and put a quarter in the phone. So now I got this newfangled cellular machine in my pocket. I don't understand the voice that I just gave for these coaches.
I don't either, but it was fantastic. And I'm sure that people on the other end are listening right now, just laughing in their car, wherever they're going right now. They're having a fantastic time. I know I am. But let's talk about some running backs. LeVeon Bell coming off the market's a huge one. Like, I didn't envision hitting the open market, but now that he's not, I think the guys that are going to generate the most interest would be Carlos Hyde and Dion Lewis. What's your take on these guys? Do you feel, I feel like both of them are moving on from the teams that they were with, correct?
I would agree. And Dion Lewis more so, there's reports the Patriots want him back. Dion Lewis needs to go get paid.
Yeah.
That's what I think he needs to do. He's had his time to shine. He's got, unfortunately he was, banged up most of that Super Bowl year. And then if I recall right, he tweaked his hamstring returning a kick or something. So that probably didn't go as he had hoped, but he needs to go and make money. I think he ends up, and it's not a terrible landing spot for him, but the New York Jets, Matt Forte retiring. I think that they won't have a big guy if you're going with Bilal Powell and Dion Lewis, but I don't think that it necessarily matters the way that Lewis runs. I love Dion Lewis. I think he's a fantastic running back. So I think that's where I have him pegged as going, a team that will be willing to pay up to get an electric playmaker. And Carlos Hyde, I called it my wish a couple months ago, selfishly because Carlos Hyde is on my dynasty team. But I also think that the fit makes sense, and that's the Indianapolis Colts. I think that Carlos Hyde would bring some toughness to that team. He's a well-rounded player. He can catch. Maybe he's not elite Devontae Freeman in the passing game, but I think he's pretty darn good. And on top of that, then he gets to replace Frank Gore yet again. I like narratives, Mike. I like when things are just interesting to pay attention to. So, and then his fantasy value would be tremendous because whoever is the starting running back and the goal line back for the Colts, we're gonna love that player.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to see Carlos Hyde end up there, and then they don't have to be tempted to spend number 3 on Barkley if that happens to fall in the draft.
They should not be interested in Barkley. They have too many holes in that team to take him at 3. And there's people telling me that
they would. I
really hope not. I understand why people love Barkley. I really do. But when you have as many holes as the Colts do, there's no way they should be considering a running back. Dion Lewis, I got a better fit for you. How about this one? This one I feel really good about, and I feel like it should happen. I feel like DeMarco Murray's going to get cut, and I think he's going to go to the Titans.
Interesting.
Because you think about it, you pair him. I don't think that he's a guy. I know that he had 20 touch games down the stretch, but do we think he's a guy built to handle 20 touches per game? No. Ideally he's in a timeshare where and he's a really good pass blocker. He's 5'7", 193 pounds, but he's done phenomenal in pass blocking. That's why he stuck around with the Patriots. He was able to block for Brady. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, something Derrick Henry cannot do. I feel like this would be a 1-2 punch that would be so much better than DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry. I just think that DeMarco they can cut and not lose a dime of their cap space.
Yes. He's cut. I'm with you that they will be moving on.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at. I think Dion Lewis there would be a tremendous fit. I feel like the Texans are going to be involved in Dion Lewis. The reason I say that is because Lamar Miller can get cut for minimal money. I think it all depends on Dante Foreman's health. And how is he bouncing back from that nasty injury last year? The Jets are definitely a team in the mix too. So Carlos Hyde.
No, I dig it. Oh yeah. Well, I want to hear your Carlos Hyde take.
Carlos Hyde, man, I feel like the Patriots would be an ideal fit. Like I think.
You're getting me sweaty again, Mike.
I think we're dreaming at this point though, because it's like the Patriots signed 26-year-old running backs. I don't think they do.
They signed Rex Goathead last year.
Was Burkhead that young? Was he 26? I thought he was like 27 or 28.
Yeah. Oh, you're saying on the younger side. I think he's 27 right now.
Okay, so maybe he was 26, but they got him on the cheap though. Like really cheap. Like I don't think Hyde's going to come that cheap. I would expect Hyde to get, I don't know, $6 million a year. Is that fair?
Seems about right.
So the Patriots are one team. The Ravens, apparently, they're in the market for a running back, even though Alex Collins is
so bizarre. Why would you not just bring Alex Collins back?
I don't know. Like Kenneth Dixon, what are they doing with him? Do they still believe in him? Is he like completely out of the picture? The Ravens are a weird wild card in this one because they don't have much money to spend. But another fit for Carlos Hyde, potentially replacing Jonathan Stewart in Carolina, because they're not going to give Christian McCaffrey. They talked about it last year. We figured out who Christian McCaffrey is, who he isn't. We don't want to give him 15 carries a game. That's not the player he is. They need someone to replace. I don't think Cameron Artis-Payne is the answer. So could the Panthers potentially come in and do that, or the Bucks?
The Bucks would be a tremendous fit as well. My hesitancy to put Carlos Hyde there was they are just escaping from a disaster of overpaying a running back who is at that age where things could start going south real quick. So are they willing to do that again?
Right.
But I'm with you that if that happened, that would be a fantastic fit for the fantasy value of Carlos Hyde.
Yeah, I feel like Saquon Barkley, I think there's a real chance that Barkley falls to the Bucks at 7. I know nobody wants to admit that, but I think there's a real possibility he does. I think that the fantasy community, draft Twitter, and everybody gets all worked up where it's like teams to draft a running back in that area. You have to have a team that is built to have a luxury pick. And I think the Jaguars last year were a perfect example of a team that was able to afford Leonard Fournette. They had wide receivers on the outside. They felt like Bortles was what he was. You know, they weren't going to take a quarterback there, and their defense was just elite. They built that defense, and it was a luxury pick. I don't know if there's a team in the front, like in the top 5, top 6 picks, that can take a running back and feel completely good about it. I mean,
well, I don't know if they'll feel completely good about it, but I'm with you. Maybe he could fall, but my percentage chance of him escaping being a Cleveland Brown is so low, especially with the 2 picks at 1 and 4. Even if Hugh acquiesces and they take a quarterback at 1, if he falls to 4, I think that they've got the pick folded up as a paper airplane, or just immediately throwing it. You can't get it up fast enough. It would just the Cleveland Browns will do it. I firmly believe they will.
So what do they do with Duke Johnson then? Did they trade him?
They just let him sit back there.
Rot on the bench with 1 year left on his deal, like they did behind Isaiah Crowell, who might not get a job because Chris Ivory just stole one of the jobs that he should have got with the Bills.
See, this is what I'm saying. I don't believe they know what they're doing.
I think you're correct.
So I will be baffled. I'll be happy I don't have any 101 shares, unfortunately, this year. So for the people out there playing Dynasty, if Barkley did get past them and goes to the Bucks, that would be sensational for you.
That team is just a nightmare for matchups. I mean, I know they need to build the offensive line, but really, how many men can you have inside the box when you have the weapons that they have on that team? So, yeah, I mean,
completely agree.
That's a dream scenario for fantasy football players, though. I'll catch plenty of passes there. So, going down the list, outside of Hyde, outside of Dion Lewis, there's another running back who believes that he should be the primary focus of a backfield, and I'm not sure if NFL teams would agree. But Jerick McKinnon. He's obviously someone that, going back to all these metric guys, all of you combine fanatics out there that tell me that means so much. Jerick McKinnon was one of those guys like that people were so geeked out about. They couldn't wait to see Jerick McKinnon take over for Adrian Peterson. And then what happened? He got his job taken away from him from Matt Asiata, who's currently jobless. Now, I know McKinnon had a few solid games in 2017 against a Bears team that legitimately, I think there were about 5 of their 6 linebackers that game. And then slowly, Latavius Murray started to eat into that workload. Not to say that Jerick McKinnon cannot be a contributor, because I think he's a fine player if you know how to use him. Do you think that he's going to find a job as a workhorse? Because there's only a few teams that I think he could potentially go and do that. The Jets are one of them, because the Jets obviously they've never liked Bilal Powell, so that's not going to happen. The Bucs is another one. I mean, the Titans, that would be a timeshare with Derrick Henry, so I don't know if he'd want to go there. Do we see any job outside the Jets and the Bucs that potentially Jerick McKinnon could be the feature back?
I don't see him getting a feature job anywhere, but you mentioned the 2 teams that I think are the highest probability for him. Would be the Bucs. They're losing Charles Sims. They've already lost Doug Martin.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have to address the situation. Get Jerick McKinnon, and get him the ball in space, and McKinnon can make some good things happen. But so I like him going to the Bucs, and I'm with you that with your everything you just said, talked about the Tennessee Titans, have Derrick Henry be the hammer, and then Jerick McKinnon be this complete change of pace. I think that would be a sensational backfield for the Tennessee Titans.
I agree. And that's the thing is like, how much do we buy into McKinnon's words? Because he basically said that this is
he can say it all he wants, but this is what he's going to find out. This is why my motto for is mothers, don't let your sons grow up to be running backs, because it's just a bad career choice.
Yeah, it's getting worse and worse by the year. I mean, you see some of these vets like one of the players that we're going to talk about here in a minute is Jonathan Stewart. He obviously was cut by the Panthers. Honest to God, Mike, if I'm an NFL team right now and I'm in free agency and I'm looking for a running back for a year or two, I'm not signing Isaiah Crowell. I would rather sign Jonathan Stewart, even though he's old.
Really?
I don't like Isaiah Crowell. Like, I'm just not a fan. I have no idea why he was playing in front of Duke Johnson. I think it's just one of those Hugh Jackson things that...
Did he steal your newspaper or something? Like, what happened here?
He's just very unimpressive to me. I feel like he's a running back that gets what's blocked and nothing more. I mean, the Browns' offensive line is not a bad line. Like, that's a line that he should not have had an issue running for 4 yards per carry behind.
Right.
Like, his hands are...
There are some large question marks, but just to go along with the theme of, like, well, if I need a running back for a year, I wouldn't pay Crowell, I wouldn't pay Stewart. I would draft a running back in the 5th round.
It's a good point.
and pay him garbage. That's what stinks about the position, is you give up everything with your body and you don't get paid appropriately. That's all I'm saying about why I don't want my son to be a running back.
Right.
But man, I don't think Jonathan Stewart is going to find work. I think Crowell, someone will take a chance just because of the youth is there, and he's flashed a couple times. Jonathan Stewart, just aside from the one run against the Minnesota Vikings where they had like a goal line blitz from Madden or something called, I have no idea what was happening there. So even Jonathan Stewart, I think, was very confused that he broke through the first level, and the first level was the entire defense. So he's like, "Whoa, oh, okay, touchdown for Jonathan Stewart." So I think it'll be pretty tough for Jay Stu to find any kind of work where he's not just depth.
Well, I think that, like, the lesson to be learned here is that Chris Ivory's agent deserves a lot of money, because
man,
he already found him a job.
He does.
And that's a guy I did not see getting another job. I did not see it happening, but he signed before free agency. He did a phenomenal job.
In my opinion, that's a good job.
Yeah.
You get to go be the touchdown vulture and like let Shady do the heavy lifting. Just come in here every once. I thought that was a great fit.
I agree. I felt like Crowell would go to the Bills. I felt like that was a legitimate solution, like where they needed a number 2 on the depth chart, and they also needed to figure out, could this guy be our future? And I felt like the Bills were a team that would have went after Isaiah Crowell. So landing Ivory, I mean, it is what it is. Stewart could be my whole Patriots thing. That could fit into that, where it's like, they find the guy that is at the end of his road, but they feel like he's still got something left in the tank. They're not going to ask him to catch any passes. They're just going to ask him to run the ball, and he can do that.
My new hammer for the New England Patriots is Jeremy Hill.
Is it really?
Yep, I think he'll come in and just lumber for 3 a carry, and they'll bring him in on the goal line, and he'll be Gilly this year, the new Mike Gillislee,
Well, is Rex
and
Burkhead gonna be back there?
I don't think he will. I think Rex Burkhead's gonna go get paid. I actually have Burkhead going to, with Allen Robinson going down to San Francisco, being a versatile weapon
Hmm.
for Kyle Shanahan. I know he doesn't fit the particular mold of being a like that super agile athlete like Freeman and Coleman, but he can do everything, and he's an excellent pass catcher. So I think that balances things out for Rex Burkhead, and I think he would be a good fit down there in to take over because I'm not buying the Breida and Joe Williams
Nope.
hype.
Absolutely not.
No, phew. Uh, I thought we were gonna have to fight.
No, I'm not. No, I was never a Joe Williams guy. I think Matt Breida, I think he's a depth chart guy. And that's the thing is like in my mock draft I did over a week ago, I had Barkley going at 9 to the 49ers actually.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, people told me I was nuts. And after watching the media coverage on Barkley, and basically it was the Saquon Barkley event put together by the NFL, I don't see any way that he sneaks down that far anymore. But I still wouldn't be shocked if he fell to the Bucks. I mean, I still stand by that just because I feel like I try and think logically when it comes to teams, and maybe I'm wrong in that assessment of the Browns, but
The NFL is not a game of logic. That's where you're wrong. The NFL is a game of passion
that's the
and
problem.
emotion.
I do love
That's
the
why
I
why he won't.
I love the 49ers call though on Burkhead. I have them as one of the destinations. If he doesn't go back to the Patriots, I feel like the 49ers, the Dolphins, and the Titans would be involved in trying to acquire Rex Burkhead. I feel like he'd fit in with those teams. I think he's proven that he can contribute on first and second down. He does a fine job on third down. He's like that utility back. And again, he could play special teams, which helps out.
Yeah, I think he's a great player. Very underrated player.
For sure. And I'm going to mention the others. These are the guys that we're not really going to talk about because, well, they might not have jobs. I mean, Jeremy Hill's going to get a job, but I don't really want to talk about him. Eddie,
We already
yeah, well, Mike talked about him more than I wanted to. But yeah, Eddie Lacy, does he get a job? Alfred Morris, Frank Gore, Charles Sims, Darren Sproles. By the way, why is Frank Gore? Why hasn't he retired? Like, because I mean,
I don't know.
as much as
Well,
I love.
I think the reason he hasn't retired, I looked it up. He's very, very close to the next to the threshold of becoming, I think, the number 2 rusher
Yeah.
of all time. So if that was in play and I'm Frank Gore and I just have to go be a backup somewhere, I might do it just to be the number 2. The only name, and I was mocked because I brought him up as someone who I think can just end up on a team we don't see it coming and just be sneaky, is Charles Sims, because I think he's a great pass catcher. So I think that he could end up on somewhere. I know I sent McKinnon to Tennessee, but Sims could easily end up in a situation like maybe he ends up on the Chargers. They don't think Eckler should be the backup. All of a sudden, Charles Sims is the backup to Melvin Gordon and the pass catcher for Phillip Rivers, and you're like, wow, Charles Sims has fantasy relevance.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. He was one of the last names. Him and Darren Sproles were the last 2 I had on my list. So, yeah, there's plenty of those roles to go around. I feel like they're going to land jobs. Sproles talked about not wanting to go out the way he did, and I understand that. But Sims is someone who flashed a little bit. I mean, he was kind of like Doug Martin. So I don't know if it's something in Tampa where it's just like the offensive line was very inconsistent, because you've seen some up and down results between those 2 backs, like consistent up and down. So maybe it's something in the water in Tampa. Who knows? But
You got
Charles
an
Sims,
athletic trainer problem down there.
maybe they need to get Penn State's trainer in there, right?
Yeah, bring whatever. I mean, he's got some special sauce of some kind.
Sauce. We'll leave it at that. He's got Barry Bonds juice. No,
I was going more like like the Big Mac sauce. I mean,
I'm sure the Big Mac gives you 99th percentile athletes. Oh man, but yeah, all right. So the biggest free agent, I think, in terms of who's going to demand the most money in free agency, I think that's a given right now, and it's Kirk Cousins.
Yes.
Is it concluded now? Is it like the end of the road? I think every NFL team has given up. Is he going to the Vikings? Is that's what's happening?
Yeah, it is to me, and it was actually this was over like a month ago. As soon as the rumor was even floated that Minnesota might be interested in Kirk Cousins. And I've some impassioned listeners of the fantasy footballers who are like, no, Mike, he's going to the Jets. They're going to throw so much money at him. I'm like, it doesn't make sense. I don't know. I've been making fun of the NFL for not making sense on this podcast, but he wants to win. The guy has received about $50 million in the past 2 years. He's gonna get a lot of money, and if the reports are to be believed, K-Fan from Minnesota is saying that Minnesota's ready to offer him a 3-year, fully guaranteed $91 million contract, and he's gonna go to a team that was 1 game away from the Super Bowl? And you think he's gonna go somewhere else? Get out of here. This is the the biggest dream sequence of events that a quarterback could ever imagine. Is you like it's like being drafted number 1 by a team that's in the playoffs. They're not the number 1 pick because they were the worst team in football. They just happen to have the number 1 pick. They're going to give you a lot of money, and you are a playoff bound team with an elite defense. You have one of the best pair of wide receivers in the NFL. Kirk Cousins is a Minnesota Viking, and everything else is just completely irrational.
All right, so let's pretend that this is the case. Like, let's pretend it's the 15th. The Vikings announce we have signed Kirk Cousins to a 3-year, $91 million deal. Where does Kirk Cousins go in fantasy football drafts? Like, what number quarterback is he
Where
off
does
the
he
board?
go? Too high. He's going to go too high. But Kirk Cousins will be a very solid fantasy wide receiver or fantasy quarterback in Washington with garbage around him. He ended up as what, he was the 6th or 7th. I know as far as consistency, he did hurt you because it wasn't in every type of weak thing. But with that offense, Kirk Cousins, I would be shocked if Kirk Cousins failed to outproduce what he did last year, which would make him he should be drafted as the 7th or 8th quarterback more than likely. But with the hype, it could get out of control.
I agree with you, and that's the thing is there's a lot of questions about the offense. They obviously have an elite defense where it's like, he's not going to have to be in these shootout battles that the Redskins were in sometimes. So I'm with you in the fact that the hype would kind of get out of control, but I do believe he'd be a more consistent fantasy option. John DeFilippo, the new offensive coordinator there, taking over for Pat Shermer, like that should all benefit Kirk Cousins from going there. So I'm with you. I think he would be in that 6 to 10 range. It's just trying to figure out the logistics of it and sit down and actually do my projections. But outside of that, I think the only other teams that are going to be involved in that chase, if there is any chase, is it's the Jets and the Broncos. We haven't heard anything for whatever reason. We haven't heard anything about the Browns going after Kirk Cousins, and I really don't know why.
But yeah, well, because we have the Jets. You have the Jets narrative of they can throw a bunch of money at him, and if you had 2 bad teams throwing a bunch of money, you would pick the New York Jets. So I think that the media just said that this one is just too silly. So we're not even going to push it forward.
Yeah. So the next quarterback, I think that comes from Minnesota, obviously leaving Case Keenum. I think he's hitting free agency at the best time of his personal career, but I also think he's hitting it at the worst time of actual free agency in terms of the quarterbacks available in free agency. He's not the best one available. Kirk Cousins is, and then you have the draft that's considered a class that is going to give you 5 or 6 starting quarterbacks. That's what people are projecting anyways. So Case Keenum, is he a solution for your Arizona Cardinals?
I don't think that he is a solution, but I wouldn't mark him up as a problem. I think that Arizona is going to end up with Keenum or Bradford. I mean, we call the Minnesota leftovers of Keenum, Bradford, or Teddy Bridgewater.
Right.
Bring them in, and hopefully, like you said, draft Lamar Jackson or make some kind of a statement that you're trying to fix the quarterback position. I have Case Keenum ending up in Denver, where I think that you can have. He showed he could be a manager for the Vikings. I think that's what they want because they want to be a team like the Vikings. Win with defense, a couple good wide receivers. So it would be a pretty good place for Case Keenum to end up. So that's where I think he goes.
That's actually not a bad landing spot. I think the Broncos are one that I may have overlooked a little bit because like at the number 5 spot in the draft, then they can look at maybe like a Quentin Nelson. Maybe they go there. Maybe they get a Minkah Fitzpatrick. Maybe he falls to 5, and then they land themselves a top-notch safety. So yeah, so that's actually not a bad landing spot. I kind of like that one actually because I had the Cardinals, the Bills as a potential suitor, but it seems like Tyrod, they're going to be stuck there.
I'm with you that the Bills are going to bring someone in. They're going to do their darndest to have someone pass pass Tyrod, but if you look at the cap situation of what it would cost to cut him, who's going to replace him, you made the playoffs, so you're not anywhere close to drafting a top level one of these rookies. So you're stuck. They have Tyrod Taylor, but I think that someone like Bradford or Bridgewater could end up there as well.
Yeah, and they also benched him in the midst of that playoff season, which was the most.
Oh, they almost benched away their playoff run.
That was the frustrating time for everyone. Yeah, I don't understand it, but yeah, the last few names at quarterback, these are guys that I don't think that they land a starting job. Sam Bradford, AJ McCarron, and Teddy Bridgewater, as you mentioned. These are guys that I feel like Bridgewater is going to have to take a 1 or 2 year deal, show a team that he's healthy throughout their practices, their offseason workouts. AJ McCarron, he won his grievance against the Bengals, but I don't think he actually won anything. I think it would be better if he was a free agent next year. And then Sam Bradford, it's just like, you have his head coach coming out saying that his knee issues are degenerative. That doesn't help him in free agency.
Oh, yeah, that's rough, man.
That was almost rude. I don't know if it was just to keep Sam Bradford there. Maybe they want to sign Bradford to a contract to be a backup to Kirk Cousins. I don't think he does that. I think that the Dolphins or maybe like the Bengals might sign him. I mean, I just feel like it's a team that has a starter that's a little unreliable, that there might be a few questions on. Maybe even the Jags. Maybe the Jags take because Chad Henne's a free agent, maybe sign Bradford to back up Bortles. I don't think that would be a bad solution for them.
I think that the Jets end up grabbing one of these guys as just in case type of a situation. And because the Browns continue to do strange things, and Hugh Jackson brings in players that he likes. And if you've ever seen the hug video, you know that Hugh Jackson loves AJ McCarron.
That was a bro hug.
Oh, look, I've given many bro hugs in my life. There's nothing wrong. Just saying that Hugh Jackson loves AJ McCarron.
He does.
So McCarron in Cleveland, it makes a lot of sense, even though he would likely be quickly replaced by whoever they take at 1 or 4.
Correct. And I'm starting to believe that that's Baker Mayfield.
No, don't do it. Don't send Baker there.
I hope not. I really don't. I mean, I don't know. The problem is I don't think Baker's going to end up with a team that he's going to want to be on. I think it's going to be either the Browns or the Jets. I think that those are the two teams that
at least the Jets.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. I mean, the Browns once they get rid of Hugh Jackson, I believe that they're going to be a good football team. I really believe that.
What's ridiculous is if you just talk about the weapons on the Cleveland Browns, you're like, okay, well, you have Josh Gordon, you have Corey Coleman, you have David Njoku, you have Duke Johnson. Like, how are you failing?
Mm-hmm.
How are you failing?
A good offensive line too, like Joe Thomas, a premier left tackle, Hall of Famer.
Do we know if he's coming back for sure?
Rumors are now that he's leaning towards coming back.
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
Which
is their ineptitude it is baffling, because if you take just move that set of skill players to a different team, and fantasy football players would be drooling all over themselves to get those guys.
Well, think about that for a second. You just mentioned those skill position players, right? That's why, for me, I think Darius Geis makes more sense in the second round for them. If they were to take, let's say, Mayfield at number 1, let's say at number 4, they go Minkah Fitzpatrick. They're able to move Jabril Peppers back to his natural safety position. And then, grab Darius Geis in the second round to pair with Duke Johnson. I think everything molds well. Their defense should be a lot better. And on top of that, they have more picks. Like, that's not the only picks that I'm talking about. We're just talking about 3 picks. I think they have 7 of them in the top, 70 picks. So again, coaching matters in the NFL so much more than any other sport. And I've said this on this podcast so many times that I can go on a rant about it, about why it matters. Hugh Jackson's a bad coach. And once he leaves that Browns franchise, you might as well get on the Browns bandwagon now, because they're going to be a good team, provided they don't completely screw up this draft, which is entirely possible. So let's go on to tight ends before we get out of here, Mike. The 3 tight ends, I think there's 3 that everybody needs to know. I'm not going to put Austin Seferian-Jenkins in the group, but Jimmy Graham, he's generating interest from the Saints. I think the Dolphins might be interested. The Ravens could be a red zone presence. Tyler Eifert, he's one that I thought might get franchise tagged. I didn't hear it today, so I'm assuming he did not. But the Bengals were reportedly thinking about it, because the price tag, or the franchise tag for tight ends, is like the lowest price. Like, they could have kept him for a decent amount. I don't know what he's going to generate in the free agent market with all his back questions. He's now missed 40 of the last 64 games in his career. Like, I'm not making that up. Like, that's for real.
But he's bad.
Yeah, but he's also caught 18 touchdowns on his last 126 targets. So, I mean, the dude can perform in the red zone. And then you have Trey Burton, which is Sigmund Bloom was on our podcast the other
He
week.
is the new hotness, man.
Well,
I'm
that's the
very excited.
Sig said that Trey Burton's his number one free agent tight end. I mean, where are you at with these three guys? Like, where do you want to see Trey Burton land?
I have Trey Burton. I actually pegged him down for the Baltimore Ravens. I know I talked about Jordan Matthews there as well, but Trey Burton, an athletic pass catching tight end, like Dennis Pitta. We've seen what can happen when Joe Flacco loves his tight end and can make things happen for fantasy purposes. So I think that would be a pretty solid fit for Trey Burton, who's as far as I know, it's not known as the best blocker, but he is an excellent athlete. And you saw what happened is they just said, "Hey, Zach Ertz is missing." You're like, is he? Is he really? I think his name just says Trey Burton now.
Yeah.
Because he comes in and replaces him perfectly fine. So I like him going to Baltimore. The other interesting fit for him was just maybe Cincinnati didn't pay Tyler Eifert because they're getting ready to offer Trey Burton a bunch of money.
Possible. What about the Jets? Because the thing is, Austin Seferian-Jenkins is a free agent.
I think ASJ does end up back there. I know they've already talked contract a little bit. They didn't get there, but Seferian-Jenkins, I think he's going to find that his market is not what he would hope for.
I kind of agree with you on that, and we could see him signing back with the Jets. But as of right now, their depth chart is like Eric Tomlinson. I don't know if Will Tye is still on the roster.
Oh yeah, Will Tye.
Oh, we don't need to talk. Will Tye was the next big thing in New York for a little while.
That was the 3 touchdown game, man. It was incredible.
So I know you, like, as well as me, you and I are both high on Nick Vannett, the Seattle Seahawks tight end, because we have Luke Wilson and Jimmy Graham hitting free agency. But and the Seahawks are moving on. That seems like it's apparent from Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham, I think that the Saints are an ideal landing spot for him. I think the Cardinals are another team that should show some interest. But so let's pretend that happens. Would they crush our dreams and sign Tyler Eifert, Seahawks?
He was actually, we did the footballers, we did a we're projecting where these guys are going to go. I had Seattle down for Eifert, and I said, no, I cannot even speak this into existence.
That's how I feel.
So I removed it, and I said that Eifert will end up in Miami because they just like to overpay tight ends and not really know what to do. So, but yes, I think that Seattle makes sense for Tyler Eifert. If they really want to have that pass or the end zone catching, that's a ridiculous statement. The end zone weapon at the tight end position. But I'm with you, man.
We're delirious.
That Nick Vannett, pick him up. If I grabbed him off of waivers, it's a long shot, but it's a shot that's worth taking.
Yeah, I like Nick Vannett. And that's the thing. I think that Jimmy Graham, if he doesn't go to the Saints, I think the Dolphins, like you mentioned it, throwing the money around there. I feel like they're going to try and compensate for the loss of Jarvis Landry wherever he goes, because
right.
I think we all know right now that the Dolphins just want anything for Jarvis Landry. That's why they tagged him.
You mentioned that the Seahawks are moving on from Jimmy Graham. The unfortunate thing is that football has moved on from Jimmy Graham as well.
Yeah, unfortunately. And that's the thing is, like, that's what I put in my piece is, like, he's 31. So that's usually considered not a bad age for a tight end because they play a little bit longer. But Jimmy Graham isn't a tight end. He's a wide receiver, and he's a big one. So, big wide receivers like Calvin Johnson, we see them break down early in their career. And obviously Jimmy Graham had a devastating knee injury. Yeah. So, it might be towards the end of the road. But then again, Jimmy Graham, does he have enough to play with Drew Brees for another year or two? Because Drew Brees is 39 years old. So I feel like that's a logical fit. They have a need there. Kobe Fleener, obviously, I think they have to move on and just admit that they made a mistake.
Yep.
But yeah, I those are the 3 big tight ends. The other ones, Seferian-Jenkins, as we mentioned, Zach Miller of the Bears. I think they're going to go on to Adam Shaheen. Ben Watson of the Ravens. I don't know if he lands another job. And then Antonio Gates is actually a free agent. I mean, I would assume that the Chargers
can't imagine he goes anywhere but back to the Chargers or to retirement.
Yeah, I mean, I know he wants to play like another year, he said, but I just don't see it. I don't know. I think he should just retire. I think he should call it quits, and then the Chargers can draft another backup tight end to Hunter Henry and kind of move on from there.
Did you see you brought up Arizona. Did you see the Steve Keim quote that he was actually, and I know it's that time of the year, but he put some praise onto Ricky Seals-Jones. Yeah, he did. And it's interesting because you have Jermaine Gresham getting hurt there right at the very end of the season. So maybe Arizona sees a little bit more of Seals-Jones.
I have a special place in my heart of hate for Ricky Seals-Jones. I was really strapped to tight end. I can't remember who it was in one of my leagues, and I played him as a streamer. And I think it was week 16. I think it was the championship week. And he put up a big fat 0. And I lost that game by, I think it was like 1.2 points. Like if I would have just.
Was that the week where I don't remember the matchup, but there was a matchup in the playoffs where Seals-Jones was just primed to go off.
Great one. He didn't score a single point.
Yeah, I remember it well. I think it was my start of the week.
Yep. I can't even talk about him with a straight face anymore. I just get all funny inside. But no, Mike, this is fun, man. Like I've had a blast the past couple of weeks talking with some of my best friends in this industry, and Mike's one of those guys. Mike, let our listeners know where they can find you on Twitter.
You can find me at FF Hitman, and you can follow the show at the FF Ballers.
Yeah, it's good stuff over there. I love those guys. And as usual, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike Taglier NFL. We will get back to you guys next week as free agency actually begins, and we can start to talk about actual things. But as always, thank you for listening, and until next time, lights out.
I just wanted you to watch me dissolve.